these different inspirations that had change not happened, we would never have been exposed to them. So at the end of the road of change is almost always a good thing. And so I hope that inspires you tonight, even as we find ourselves in the middle of all of this stuff. So I want you to look at this picture for a moment. You can see up in the top right-hand corner of all these pictures, there's a number. So as you look at them, I want you to do this fairly quickly so that there's not a lot of overthinking it. I want you to just pick the image that fits how you are feeling right now inside this COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment. I want you to just look at these, pick which number. And once you've done that, if you'll just put the number in the chat box. All right, so however you're feeling, whichever one of these images seems to resonate with you tonight as you think about where you are inside this pandemic, I want you to kind of hold on to this image and about all the ways that you would describe this to someone else. Let's say you chose the scramble of yarn, number 7. Think about how you would describe that to somebody as how you're feeling about this pandemic and your experience of it. If it's the bowl of fruit, you know, what does that mean? Does this mean it's a whole tangle of all kinds of fruit? Some you like, some you don't? Does it mean it's a very orderly thing? Does it mean you've got all of your right things in the basket and it's all nicely done? You know, the images can mean different things to different people. So I want you to just hold on to that. Onto that image. All right, so when we talk about change, probably tonight, if we had some sort of a technical difficulty and all of this ended, I would do what I'm about to say is the most important thing in trying to manage your own self and your own responses in the middle of change. When we were doing our research about what is it with humans, what is it about us that resist change, that we resist the things that we ask for even. Have you ever noticed that? That you ask for change to come along and then it comes and you still resist it. So there's a natural stage of resistance that humans have in our own system and how we're put together. And so because of that, it's really important for us to understand our own human system so much better than most of us do. The truth is none of us got Change 101 in high school. And so we don't have a lot of information most of the time about how to manage ourselves or that we even have a system that is at work. So when we started to do our research about this, one of the things we most wanted to know was what is change by definition? The reason I say that is because in the English language, at least, change can mean something we do with frequency, like we change our underwear or we change our socks or we change our clothes. I mean, that's something we do with some frequency. Or it can mean something that that is completely new and different. And that's what change can mean too. So for our purposes, what we discovered after doing a lot of research about definition is that basically change is the experience of something new, the experience of something new, all right? Now, what most people say is things aren't the way they used to be. That's more the language. People don't walk around and going, you know, saying to you, oh, I'm having a new experience. That's really not what people say. What they say is things aren't the way they used to be. Can we all agree that as of a couple of months ago, things are not the way they used to be? There's not one thing about our lives that's the same. And so this is a good working definition. I want to say a little bit more about it, and then we're going to move on. The reason this is so important is because most of the time when we have a change experience, there's something about it that is the same or is familiar. So usually change experiences are not entirely new. But the thing that will trip us up is whatever is new about a change. So a quick example, just a personal example for me. When my father died, I had had other people in my family die. So I knew something about what it was to lose a family member. I knew some things about grief. I knew some things about how to plan a funeral. I knew some things about how my family were going to behave in the face of death. So I knew some things. But does it make sense to you that there was something distinctly different and new about losing my father than losing another family member? My mother's still alive, but I expect that when she dies, that will be something new and different compared to losing my father. So what's important is trying to discover for yourself what is new about this experience for me, completely and totally new. When I ask my brain to give me something about it, I got nothing. That's basically how it feels. So this whole idea of something new is really important. Okay. All right. The other thing we know about change is that it's motivated by three things: by crisis, chance, and choice. I put these in the order of the percentage of the time that we are motivated by them. So crisis is the number one motivator of change. Sad as that is, it is still true. Chance is the second highest motivator, and choice is the lowest by far. Now, there's something in particular that I've been thinking about a lot in the face of this pandemic, and that is, of course, it is motivated by this health crisis, right? And so what we find is that everything we are experiencing right now is motivated by this crisis. And I want you to think about just the nature of crisis. We come together to address a crisis, but most of what we do in the midst of a crisis is not sustainable. Does that make sense? And so when change is created by crisis, it usually never completes itself because it's not sustainable. And so I want us to just sort of sit with that for a minute and think about what that means for us. We are already seeing some of it, which is part of what we did to address this crisis was to stay at home, right? So now that things are starting to open up in most places, what you have is that people are not able to sustain social distancing, for example. It was something we did to address a crisis. The truth is it needs to continue, but have you noticed how people are not complying? How there's a lot going on where people are not paying attention, they're not complying. That's because changes made in a crisis are not usually sustainable, okay? And so that is a particular issue that we have to know is the truth about the situation we're in right now. All right. Now, our question to ourselves in this research was, if change is the experience of something new, then does the brain have a way that it processes a new experience? The answer was always going to be yes, it does, because the brain is not a random machine, and of course it has a way that it processes new information. But the ultimate question was, is there enough brain research, neurological research that will tell us how that works in our human system? And so we discovered that there was lots and lots of information about how the brain processes a new experience. There are all kinds of pieces. You'll see that the layers of the brain tell us something about that. We have our natural instinct for fight and flight. We have neural pathways that signal a lot of the things that happen for us in times of change. Maslow's hierarchy of needs track the change cycle very well. Our memories and how they play in, and quantum physics, all of these things are about how our neurological system works. Now, don't let your head blow off your shoulders, because we're not going to talk about all of those tonight. You'll be glad to know. I do want to pick out two of them, though. and that is neuropathways and these layers of the brain. So quickly, neuropathways are the chemical electrical impulses that connect the neurons in the body. So don't let that be too complicated. Neurons send messages to the brain. The chemical electrical impulses between the neurons make sure we get messages to the brain, all right? And then this other piece of information about the brain is that we have 3 layers in our brain. The primitive brain, which is responsible for our survival, basically. Sometimes it's called the reptilian brain. So it operates like a reptile, and that is strictly to survive, to tell us to eat, to drink, to breathe, to seek shelter. And it gives us our instincts to know that there's something threatening, to give us fear, to know that something's threatening. The mammalian brain is the next layer of the brain, and it gives us some added capacity, like being able to care about other people, being able to do some communicating, putting words on things, the ability to create a perception in the world. And then the complex brain. On Gray's Anatomy, they'll call it the cerebral cortex. And so this is the outside of the brain. It's the part of the brain that humans have that no other species has. So it gives us added capacity to be able to see the big picture, to be able to apply things we know, to be able to problem solve and reason. So a very important part of our human capacity to put things together, to connect all the dots. All right, so you ready? These 2 things we need to put together, and then the change cycle will make perfect sense to you. Here's what we know. Every time you and I have a new experience, we have to form a new neuropathway in our neurological system. Literally, a new pathway is built. So we are making these pathways from the moment we're born all the way till we die. We have trillions of them. And they're very important because they send messages to the brain. So when we encounter something new, these neural pathways get built in our neurological system. Then what we know is that as they are built in this order. So think about it like wiring an outlet, a wall outlet. You know, behind that wall outlet, there are wires, right? I'm acting like I know something about it. I know nothing about how to wire anything, but I do know that there are wires you have to put together in order to get some juice out of the socket. And so this is the same thing. And so when the neural pathways are being laid down, they're laid down in this order. So first of all, we get the brain capacity when we're having a new experience. The first thing we get is the capacity to survive. That's why we'll have a natural response of fear, or something may be threatening about this, or I've got to just make sure I'm paying attention enough just to do the things that keep me safe. The next piece of our wiring that goes in is the mammalian brain, where we are able to care a little bit about other people, we're able to put words on things, we're able to make perceptions of the world. And then finally, the wiring that goes in is our ability to see the big picture, our ability to apply what we know and to reason and think through things and connect all the dots. So these are the 2 primary pieces of brain research that ultimately informed how we built the change cycle model. And so here you see it. Let me run you through this really quickly. On the far outside ring, you'll see stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This inside ring are the names of each of the stages. Okay, so those names indicate the primary experience of each stage. Then inside, you see these pie pieces. Inside the pie pieces, it tells us what we tend to feel, think, and do in each of these stages. Now, what you can see here by color, and by this little brain right here, is that the red stages represent our primitive brain. The yellow stages represent our mammalian brain, and the green stages represent our complex brain. So hopefully you're sort of starting to see how this gets put together, you know, that when something new comes into our experience, the first thing that happens is that our neurological system starts to lay down these pathways for the primitive brain. And so that's why the first two stages are loss and doubt. This is just the basics of whatever's happening. So what I'd like to do tonight, for the rest of our time, that's sort of just to lay some foundation, is to quickly take you through a tour of the 6 stages. But it's going to be a quick tour because where I want to spend most of my time tonight is stages 1 and 2. When we get to that, I'll explain why I think that's important for us to do tonight. All right, so something new comes into our experience. So COVID-19 happens, all right? And my business partner, Marianne Salerno, always says that change brings its friends. Well, I would say COVID-19 brought a whole bastion of friends with it, so that we are experiencing not one thing, not 2 things, not 3 things, but just a whole bundle of things that are brand new to us. So we're getting bombarded for sure. So all these new things come in, and we start with stage 1, so loss. Loss indicates basically an old physics law, which said that no 2 things can occupy the same space. So if something new's coming in, something has to go out, since no 2 things can occupy the same space. So loss is a natural thing. It's going to happen every time. If there is a shift, there's something new coming in, something has to go out. And so that's why we have this experience of loss. Inside that, you see these primitive brain kinds of responses, the tendency to feel fear or concern, the tendency to say, this might be threatening to me in some way. Our primitive brain is there to do that for us, and so that's one of the things that happens. Our thinking is very cautious. We're not sure what to think. We're not sure who to believe. We're not sure what's really going on, and so it's like having a radar of caution all around us. And then often our behavior is paralyzed, so we're just sort of held, like stuck for a moment, trying to figure out, get our bearings, and try to figure out what's going to be a way for me to be safe in this, and that's the reason for the paralyzation. The primary focus to get from stage 1 to stage 2 is safety. So it's a very simple thing. I want to encourage you to, in these early stages, never make this complicated, because the primitive brain is not complicated. It's very simple. We try to overdo it, overanalyze it, overthink it, over-talk about it. And the truth is, there's very simple things going on here. We just have to honor them. 2 is doubt. Now, doubt says this might be good for everybody else, but I am not convinced it's good for me. So staying at home might be good for everybody else. I'm not sure that's good for me. Going and getting a test might be great for everybody else. I'm not sure it's good for me. Wearing gloves might be great for everybody else, but I'm not sure it's good for me. You know, I could go down a whole long list, as I'm sure you could, about this pandemic. So this is a place where we have serious doubts about whether whatever this is good for me. We carry resentment that we have to deal with it at all. It's like, I got a lot of stuff on my plate. The last thing I want to do is deal with this too. There's skepticism. Have you seen enough of that? If you watch the news, if you watch anything, if you read anything, you are witnessing the level and the breadth of skepticism that's out there. And then we're just resistant. You know, it's sort of like saying, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it, period, end story. So in order to get from stage 2 to stage 3, what we need is accurate information. So this is a very important stage, because this is where we put a picture together of what's actually happening. I want to say very clearly, stage 2 is not a place where we have to like what we see. We don't have to like the information we're being given. We just have to try to put together an accurate picture. Whether we like it or not is not important at this stage of the game. All right, then we go to stage 3, discomfort. So I know in stage 2, I've figured out what this looks like. I may like it, I may not, but I know what it looks like. Stage 3 is the place where I try it on. I try to see how it fits. And I discover that like a new pair of shoes, the first time I wear them, they still hurt my feet. I have to wear them in. I have to keep trying and get those shoes to feel better on my feet. This stage is really for that purpose. This is the stage where the brain is trying to load up all this information so that we can use it. So I want you to have a picture of all this information is up there, but the brain has not sorted it out for us yet, so we don't know how to use it even though it's up there. So that's what stage 3 is. You'll see here the danger zone between stage 3 and 4. That is because stage 3 is where we either break down or break through. Once we break through to this side of the cycle, things get a lot easier. But there is this huge capacity to break down at the danger zone. Now we call this the danger zone. Notice it's not a stage, it's not a place, it's a condition. And the condition is this, where we loop back up to stage 1 and start doing what we call the danger zone waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Lost, doubt, discomfort, lost out, discomfort over and over again. So this is a place where cycling around in here can be very troubling and very challenging. So we hope to just make this passage right here and come on over into discovery. Notice the difference. Yesterday I was anxious, today I'm anticipatory. Yesterday I was confused, today I'm resourceful. Yesterday I was not productive, today I'm energized. So a big shift from this stage, from stage 3 to stage 4, a very important rounding of the circle that we need to make. After discovery, where all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can use all this information in my head, I can put words on it, I can organize it, I can actually have a decent conversation about it. That's where we start to have this in stage 4. Stage 5 and stage 6 is where we start to understand this much more deeply, and we start to use it in our lives to the point that it becomes familiar and it becomes a habit. So that's the quick round through the change cycle. I want to show you stages 1 and 2 again, and just remind you about the particular pieces that go with loss. There's fear, I'm thinking cautiously, paralyzed, and that the main things that I want to do is to be safe. And then in stage 2, the resentment that comes with that, how skeptical and untrusting I am, and basically resistant for a while until I can put the picture together. And so the primary focus of stage 2 is to get valid and accurate information. So I want you to think about these first 2 stages. This is the part I think that can be most helpful with the time that we have tonight. And that is to say that in this COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately, we are probably going to be doing the stage 1-2 loop for quite some time. I've tried every way I know, Marianne, and I've talked about this a lot, trying to figure out if there's anything more hopeful we could say about this. But I think in the interest of being honest, we have to say that the point of stage 2 is for us to get a picture of what the change looks like. And so I think you'll agree with me that every few days that picture changes. So new information is coming in, different information is coming in every day, and it shifts the picture. And every time the picture changes, then something new is happening, so you go back to stage 1. You see how that works? So you just kind of keep rounding this 1, 2, 1, 2. It's part of the reason we feel antsy and frustrated because it's hard to find resolve inside that, because about the time I get my picture together, something comes along and changes the picture. You might want to think about a jigsaw puzzle. When I was a kid, I had to be home one day, and my mother was home but she needed to be busy all day doing something, and so she wanted to keep me busy, so she bought me a jigsaw puzzle and she hid the top of the box from me. And so I learned that day that I could put the edges together and that I could find some common colors and maybe a few images. But after that, it was just trial and error. I was just sort of force-fitting pieces and really frustrated. And, I would say that reflecting on that now with what I know about the change cycle, I would say that I would have been much better off to have spent my time looking for the top of the box, wherever she hid it, instead of trying to do this trial and error. The whole point is to know what the picture looks like. Then I can start to put the pieces together. This is the job of stage 2. And so where we find ourselves in this pandemic, I think makes this a very difficult thing. So I want to say, I believe that this is what I can tell you about this 1-2 looping in a change cycle. So first of all, we'll be unable to put a picture together of our lives for quite some time. To get a complete picture is probably going to take some time. There will be a stage 1-2 loop for quite a while. Planning beyond a few weeks is likely to be futile for the rest of this year. So I think it's probably best for all of us just to sort of shed this notion that we can do even what I would usually call short-term planning, which might be, what am I going to do for the rest of this year? I would say we're talking about weeks that you might be able to plan. Thinking of life as an unfolding process will be better, and it will serve you better than fretting every time the picture changes. It's like, well, at least every time the picture changes, something new is unfolding and we're learning a little bit more. Okay, now, so these are my suggestions to you about managing the red stage looping. First of all, to make, make differentiations between the outside world and your inside world. What's happening out there around the pandemic, we have little control over what's going to happen or what we're going to know about it and when we're going to know about it. But we all have some inside world. We have the people we live with. We have some of us, maybe the people we work with. Some of us maybe have friends that we get to see at least in some way. And those are all parts of our world that we have some charge over. And so I would say focus on that and putting a picture together about how that is for you right now. And we try to move away from grinding around on the picture of the larger thing that's happening outside of us. Settle into the loop. It's going to be a while. So I'd say just kind of get accustomed to that. Determine what is within your control for the next few days and make plans based on that. So what do I have control over for the next few days, and make your plans. And I would say that probably needs to be the plan, is every 2 or 3 days, take a look and make your plans that way. This last one I think is really important. Create change within a crisis that you can be in charge of. So inside a crisis that's happening externally to us, there are still ways that we can create change inside our own life that we can be in charge of. So I think it's the 3 R's. You can be in charge of routines. So regardless of what's happening, out there, if most of us are still at home for the most part, what are the routines that you can have and keep? I think it's very helpful when you're looping around in stages 1 and 2 to really create a routine, because our routines have been disrupted. So create routines for 2 or 3 days that you can do. Check it again. You need to change the routine, but try to keep a routine. Relationships. This is a biggie, especially, not really especially, but certainly for people who are living together at home and not able to get out much. I want to say this to you. Avoid putting your relationships under a microscope during this time, okay? It's easy to get cross. It's easy to get, twisted up. It's easy to miscommunicate. It's easy to get sick of each other. It's easy to do all those things. but don't put your relationship under a microscope in these kinds of situations, because there's too many things bearing in that affect it. Other kinds of relationships with your friends, with your family that you're not able to see or be with, is to keep those intact and to do everything you can, make every effort you can make to keep connected to those people that you can't see. I actually think this is going to be a plus that comes out of this pandemic, is that people are working harder to stay connected. So I think this is a real important part of what you can be in charge of. And then rituals. So if you're actually living with somebody or with more than one person, have your rituals, whether that's meals or it's how you end your day or how you start your day, or time you set aside to talk to each other. Whatever those rituals might be, make sure you have some. I say that because these boundaries around routines, relationships, and rituals help us to manage that stage 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 looping. Otherwise, I think it could make you pretty crazy. So I hope you'll focus in on those. Okay, I'm going to stop the share for a minute. I want to come back. I want to stop for just maybe 5-6 minutes before I close and take some questions from you. You can either turn your microphone on and ask, or you can put them in the chat box. Joey, you're going to help me with the chat box? Somebody going to help me with the chat box?
Hi, Lily. This is Barb. Yes, we'll help you with the chat box.
Okay, thanks. Anybody have a question? If you did have a question, what would it be? Here's one.
Lily, Mel asked a question, but it kind of went by a while back. But Mel asked why, I mean, if this is in fact situational, so that if you might be in stage 2 regarding one thing, but on something else you're in stage 4. Is that right? Is that the way it works?
Yes, that is the way it works. Because, and especially with something like this pandemic, there are multiple changes going on all the time. So my best advice to you is that is to try to keep track of them, because our tendency is to say, if this one's going badly, or I'm not feeling great about this one, they must all be going badly. And that's usually not the truth, but our brain will generalize that information and will often send us towards the negative end of things. So yes, tracking them is a very helpful to say, well, with this one I'm doing a little bit better, with this over here I'm not doing as well, is absolutely right. I saw one. Go ahead.
Thank you. There was another question about what's the difference between routine and ritual?
So I would say that routine is really more about your schedule. Like I said to myself when this started, I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to shower and dress, and I'm going to do that routinely and not get out of the habit of doing that. And I'm going to be to work at my kitchen table by this time. And so really planning this routine that I do every day, because I have a routine when I actually leave the house and go to the office. I have a routine. So I want to keep some routines. I think those boundaries really help. I think rituals, the difference is that it might be part of your routine, but it gives meaning to something. So it's like rituals we do like at church. It means something that we do the ritual of communion, or that we do a welcome to people and we meet and greet, or we read the scripture. I mean, there are rituals that we do that give the experience some meaning. And so we don't want to go through this whole long time of being at home and being limited in so many ways, and there be no meaning. So find rituals that give your life meaning in the midst of this. So that's the distinction I would make.
Great, thank you. The next one is, when do we get out of stages 1 or 2?
Well, I'd be a multimillionaire if I knew that. So I think that I don't know what the month will be, or the day will be, or even the year will be when we get out of this, you know, or when we get out of stages 1 and 2. Here's what I do know is that as soon as we're able to complete our picture of a particular change, then we start to move out of stage 2. So once I get a complete picture, so it's that picture on the top of the box of the jigsaw puzzle. I mean, once I kind of get a picture of okay, that's how that's going to be. Some of you are involved in places trying to figure out how to go back to work. Well, when that picture is complete about what it looks like to go to work, then I might be able to go on to stage 3, where I try that routine on. Like, they tell me they're going to take my temperature every time I go in the door. We all have to wear masks. Our desks have to be this far apart. Then I'll be trying that on. That's a stage 3 action. That's a stage 3 experience, to try it on. But before that happens, you have a picture. Somebody's going to say, this is what that's going to look like. And you'll start to get a good sense and good picture of it. You may or may not like it. That's really a non-thing in stage 2. Liking it or not liking it is not an issue. Okay, other questions? Barb, do we have all of, oh, here's one. Is this why the pressure to get back to normal is so high right now, trying to force us out of those stages? Absolutely. We do not like white space. That's what I'm going to call this. We don't like blank space. Our brains hate it. So if we have this blank space out there where we don't know what it's going to look like, we don't have the information we need to know what it's going to look like, then what we'll begin to do is fill in that space with a bunch of stuff, okay? And I think one of the things we see happening right now is that people start telling themselves that it's going to be okay if they go do X, Y, Z, right? And so they'll fill that space in. And so people use their memories to fill in blank space. And the memories may not be accurate to this particular situation. Does that make sense? It's like, okay, that might be something that happened in a similar situation, but this is not this situation. And so we often are filling it in with things that are not accurate. They're not valid. They don't fit this situation, but we begin to act on them anyway. This is why people say stuff like, well, people die from viruses every year. That's why they say stuff like that, you know, because there's this memory of something coming in, and they're messing up this picture with some old, with memories that come flooding to the conscious mind. Okay. Any other questions? Good questions.
Lillie,
I feel like I'm feeling okay with the separation. How do I support or present a positive position to those who are struggling?
I missed the first part, Bart. Can you again?
I feel like I'm doing okay with the separation part of this. So how do I then present a positive position to others who are struggling more than I am with it?
Yeah. My experience is that most of the people who say they're not struggling with that are introverts who are enjoying the time away, the time alone, the time separated, the time to recharge and renew. And so I think the best way, you know, if you're an introvert and this is kind of okay for you, I think the best way to be supportive of people who are struggling with it is to understand that what they need is really different than what you need. So I think listening to them, you know, encouraging them to connect in all the ways that they can, encourage them to keep their mental health in good shape. And if they need to see, you know, talk to a therapist, I imagine Nick will talk about that. when he's on in a couple of weeks. So I think those are all ways that we can be supportive. But I would say that what's really true in stages 1 and 2 always is to listen to people. Don't try to fix it. Just listen to people. Don't try to fix it. Because in this primitive brain place, that's not a fixing place. That's a surviving place. And so what people most want is to just be heard, seen, understood, noticed. And I think if you can be good at that and just show up for them and listen, that will go a long way in these stages. Anything else?
Lillie, you're being fantastic. This is so valuable. Thank you. There's a bit of a conversation going on the sidebar and the chat. I think Edie asked, what are people doing, for ritual and for routine to help them just ground themselves? And so there's been some really nice ideas. I just want to let folks know, yeah, if you put those ideas in the chat box, and then if you look at the very bottom, there's 3 little dots at the right of your chat box. You can save chat, and it will save it for a file into your computer for you. So if there are some great suggestions there, or I'm a picture taker. I've been taking pictures all night. You can just grab the chat box and take a few pictures. Yeah, that way you can. We are recording, so we'll be able to give you the space for the recording. But Lillie, I just think you're doing a great job, and I wonder at this point, is there one more question for Lillie? Or Lillie, have you found something that's really working, like you said earlier about your different routines? I find when I'm trying to be positive, like I think it was Jackie just mentioned earlier, I almost want to say, I don't know how many times I've typed, it's going to be okay, or we're going to be okay, and then I delete it, because we just don't know that. I feel I'm going to be okay, but we just don't know how this is going to progress. We don't know. And so I pull back, and I wonder if you could speak to that razor edge of being supportive and positive, and yet being, so.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's helpful is to realize that keeping the brain busy so that it doesn't get us too twisted up can be very helpful. So actually, the way I wanted to end tonight was to suggest this one thing. For those of you who were on last week, you heard me say this about 25 years ago. I met a futurist, and his name is Daniel Burrus. And he was just getting started out. I was just getting started out, and I heard him speak, and we connected, and we became friends and have remained friends. And he said something when I heard him speak the first time that has really stuck with me. So I want to share it with you, and I want to give you a sense of how you might use it to help yourself during this time. He said, take your next problem and skip it, because by the time you solve it, it will be obsolete. So I think in the situation we're in right now, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that by the time we solve our next problem, there's going to be another one, and that one's going to be obsolete because the picture is changing so frequently. So I would say to this, it's a good exercise for those of you who are in church, for those of you who are working, for those of you who have families. Think about it that way. So, okay, this is my next problem. Fine, I'm just going to skip that one. I'm not going to work with that one at all. What might be the next one? All right, or the one after that, and let my mind start to work on that, because what that will do is get some creative juices flowing, some wondering, some wonder what that might be, some talking, so that you're strategizing beyond this thing that's right in front of your face, and you're still not saying everything's going to be okay, but you are engaging your mind and engaging your creativity to do that. I want to give you 3 questions that you can ask, and especially for those of you who are working. This is something a consultant said to me a long time ago, and I've just adapted it. 3 questions. What business are you in? What business should you be in? And what business could you be in? Now, as a pastor, the way I have adapted that is, what kind of church are we? What kind of church should we be? And what kind of church could we be? So can I tell you something really fun? I did this exercise with myself. So I asked myself the question 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, what kind of church were we? What kind of church should we be? And what church could we be? I answered those questions 2 months ago. Today, if I say, what kind of church are we? What kind of church should we be? What kind of church could we be? You ought to see the difference in my answers today than they were 8 weeks ago. Now, I'm gonna take my next 8 weeks and skip it and say, okay, so 3 months from now, what kind of church are we? What kind of church should we be? What kind of church could we be? And as I think about that, you ought to see the answers to those questions, all based on this experience we're in right now. So those are ways to get the creativity going. What kind of family are we? What kind of family should we be? What kind of family would we be? You know, it's like all of that is a very helpful thing. What kind of relationship are we in? What kind of relationship should we be? You see what I'm saying? So if you can apply those 3 questions, it's very, very helpful to get your creativity moving and get your mind on something that actually can be helpful inside a situation where you can't control all the variables because there's so many.
Yeah.
All right. Did that bring up any questions? We may be about to run out of time.
We're good. Do we have any questions there? That was exactly where I was going, Lily. Who am I? Who should I be? Who could I be? And I love the idea of skipping the next little bit of time. Anybody with a final question for Lily?
All
okay,
right.
so
Can I end
Yes.
with a story?
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right. Some of you on this have heard me tell the story before, but you'll endure it again. It's about Diana Nyad, who was a long distance swimmer. And Diana won the gold medal in distance swimming many, many years ago. And after she won the gold medal, she decided she was going to put a new goal in front of herself. And that was to swim the English Channel. Now, the English Channel is cold, it's rough, and it's almost always fogged over. That's really different than swimming in a pool. So, so she took a year to practice. She got in the water to swim the English Channel. She swam for 24 hours, and she was starting to lose some of her ability to keep herself above the water because her muscles were cramping and her face was starting to get distorted with salt. So her coach leaned over the boat and said, why don't you get out of the water and get in the boat? It's not worth your health. You can always try again. And Diana wasn't ready to get out, so she swam for 2 more hours. At the 26-hour mark, she could barely breathe, they said. I mean, she was in pretty bad shape. And so she finally got out of the water and got in the boat. After she had a little bit of time to recover, you know, Diana discovered that when she got out of the water and into the boat, she was 1/2 mile from the shore. She said later that in any physical condition and any water conditions, she could swim a 1/2 mile, but she didn't know how close she was. And so I always think about this with the change cycle, that there are parts of this, especially the first 3 stages, that always make us think that we're going to drown in water. But the truth is, we will make it and we will be okay. And I want you to just keep reminding yourself that you're just this close. So hang in there, stay in the water, don't get in the boat. This is a time to trust and to know that you can do some things for yourself so that you can stay fully engaged and fully in the game. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. How about some love for Lily? We can do either unmute yourselves and give her some love, or you can do some of this kind of stuff. There you go.
Thank you.
Lily, thank you so much. That's better. Yeah, unmute, folks. Doesn't that sound good?
Love you, Lily. Miss you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was great.
So I want to tell you now, Lily, mute yourselves again. Goodness.
Hey, Missy. Miss you
I want to
too.
tell you now, my friends.
Hey, Brian, it's good to see your face.
Thank you. It's good to see you all. Thank you, Lily. Thank you.
No, no, we're not
Thanks,
quite done
Lily.
yet. That could have been a mistake on my
Hi, Ken.
goodness. All right, I'm gonna say one thing. I'm gonna say thank you to Lily. Lily, we know, like we said, you were just a amazing person when we first thought of what's going on and what can serve our community. So I appreciate you coming on. I want to tell you that our board met yesterday and we have people, speakers, concepts, topics, good content booked now through about the middle of August. So we were thinking, will we have to take a break? Will we have to stop, you know, over the summertime? And we said, you know what? We really want to be a service that everyone says, what's happening at Sanctuary tonight? You know, on Tuesday nights. I wonder what's happening this Tuesday at Sanctuary. So we can be a service for your families, for you, for churches and other organizations who are seeking and even sometimes struggling right now to put programming together. So we want to offer that. And to give you a little sneak peek, I have first, Ken, I have a gorgeous slide of Lily here. Let me share my screen for just a moment. And there's Lily. And we said, thank you again. Please, if you're looking or you'd like more information, you can always go to changecycle.com and find loads of information there from Marianne and Lily and what they have done with the Change Cycle. But next week, our very own Mr. Ken Martin, can you talk to us about your title, Lockdown Lovers and Others?
Thank you, Joby, and thank you, Lily. Most of us know from experience that the quality of our relationships can pretty much determine the quality of our lives. In other words, if our relationships are happy and healthy, our lives are harmonious and we're productive and happy. But if any of our most important relationships begin to go sideways, or if they are stressed, the negativity from that reverberates into all of the other areas of our lives. And what's happening right now is that we are living with this virus, which is a stressor forcing us to change the way we conduct almost every relationship in our lives, and all at the same time. And so that's what we're going to talk about next week. What's happening with the relationships right now, and especially what can we do to keep our relationships happy and healthy. And here's what we'd like for you to do. Between now and then, we'd like for you to send us any questions you have, observations, comments on the state of relationships right now. Just send them to talktous@sanctuaryinthewoods.com. That's talktous@sanctuaryinthewoods.com. And as Joby said, we're calling this segment Locked Down Lovers and Others. And so we hope to hear from you this week. We look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, everybody stay safe. And thank you for being with us tonight.
And one more. Oh my goodness, hold on here. I'm going to share my screen one more time and give you another little teaser, because in 2 weeks, we want to keep you coming back, right? So in 2 weeks, we have our first panel discussion, and Reverend Lauren Bennett, who I see you here tonight. Lauren, thank you for being here, if you're still attached. And Wes Mullins, those two are from MCC of Greater St. Louis, and Marie Alford Harkey from MCC of the Palm Beaches. Last week, we had Marcia McPhee talk to pastors, talk to worship leaders as to how they can, you know, create the ritual that Lily was talking about from the churches and from one side of the camera. In 2 weeks, we're asking these three to talk to us and give us some ideas. So instead of just catching church online, if we wanted to make it more of a ritual presence in our own home, what are some ideas and ways that we can actually take the space of our own home and make it feel like we're a little more going to church? So I'm excited about that, and I wanted to give you that little hint. That is taking us out of June, let's see, and into July, and I have done something crazy here. And then I want to say, from all of us at Sanctuary, thank you for spending Tuesday night once again at Sanctuary in the Woods. in the way we talk to you online at Sanctuary Online. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here. We're open to all sorts of feedback and want to keep getting better. We promise to keep getting better. But we, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope we brought you some value. Be safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Joby.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Kim, Jane Ann, Stedney, Joan.
Night,
Ann,
everybody.
Janet. Hi, Mom. Hi, Kathy
Mom.
and Robin. God bless.
Hey, do we use the same link for next week?
Yes.
Yes, this is
Thank you.
This is on the new link. If you just click on to www.sanctuaryonline.live, it brings you through, and you no IDs, no passwords, no nothing. So that's one of the bits of progress you made from last week. So we'll keep making changes, making upgrades. Pretty soon we hope to have some photos when you sign on so you can see what Sanctuary actually looks like if you haven't been here yet. And we'll keep it going, all right? We'll keep kind of getting better and better. Thank you so much for joining us. And international tonight, a couple of you from Canada. So thanks, cousins. Jane Ann from Canada, thanks. Ann from Colorado. Z from snowy Michigan, thank you, thank you. Love y'all.
Thank you.
Yep,
You're
can go ahead
welcome. It
and-
was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane Ann.
Thank you. I
Thanks,
enjoyed
Brendan.
it.
Thanks,
Great to
Brendan.
see everybody.
Great to see you, Jane
Joby,
Ann. Stay
remember
warm up there.
remember the recording. Joby, remember the
Yes.
recording, okay?
Thank you, honey. Bye, LZ. Bye, Sue. Good to see you guys on tonight. Bye, Linda.
I can't see anything anymore.
Can't see anything? We can see you still. I can see the top of your head.
You can?
Anyway. Yeah.
Heck. I don't, this drains my phone. I can't even find Zoom. There it is. Red.
Well, hey, good news, Linda Z.
Now I got you back.
Linda.
Yeah.
Cheryl and I, our computers are dying, and as we're doing something like this, we need a little more. So we're getting new laptops. So maybe you're getting a laptop too, huh?
Oh my God. Another hand-me-down.
Hey, it works.
I don't have anything.
It's
I
better
put
than
$200
this
into the last one. I can't get to work.
This one's gonna work fine. It's from me.
Zoom sucks
All right.
your phone dry. I can tell you that.
Yeah, you need to throw a good, well, yeah, it does, and a good battery. Anyway, Mom got on. She was
I forgot.
spotlighted early.
She what?
I said she was spotlighted early on. I said, Mom's like, I said, hi, Mom, and she says, I'm here. What do you want? The whole place started cracking up.
I had to go get her a pizza tonight. I went over and got her and drug her to town to get a pizza. Because she has needs.
Oh, good.
She has
Yeah,
needs.
she does. Yeah. Well,
It was a meat lovers pizza, Cheryl, if Cheryl's still there.
Cheryl's on the other house. We've been off internet all day long, going up, going down, going up, and we just prayed. Look at this. Here's this. I don't even gonna see it. And it just went around us for like the last 40 minutes. Oh, terrible storms, yeah. It was supposed to rain a little bit starting at 1. It started at 10, and it's like we're just deep in water, which we needed, but not during an internet time.
Yeah.
I'm coming,
we had
Barb.
sunshine all day, but we've had snow for 2 days prior to that, so.